Hey everyone, are you ready to spill the tea? Today we're going to be making a whimsical art piece using an old book, brewed tea, and artist pens. As you can see, I chose Alice in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll, and this is a mass-produced copy that I picked up at a thrift store, so no harm cutting a page out with my hobby knife. I selected the page with my favorite passage and just cut and pulled along the inside edge to release the page. This will be our canvas. And just a quick reminder, to ensure that you have everything you need before getting started, check the video description for a full list of project materials. I brewed my tea a few minutes ago, so while it continues to cool, I'm going to start taping down my page with washi tape. Okay, it's tea time. My tea is definitely cool enough to safely splash about, so you can splish and splash however you'd like, make drops with a watercolor brush, slosh some out of the cup, make circles using the bottom of the cup, anything goes. Oh, and in case you're curious, my tea of choice today is Celestial Seasonings Raspberry Zinger. And this is not a promo, it's just always been one of my favorite teas because it smells amazing and is such a pretty berry color. I know it'll be great for this project. But what about you? What's your tea of choice? Also, what's your book of choice? Leave a comment and keep the inspiration coming. And since this paper is thinner than watercolor paper, it dries more slowly and is more prone to wrinkling. I let the paper dry for a couple of hours until it was dry to the touch and then pressed it overnight, which seemed to straighten everything out. If you don't have a paper press, that's fine. Just place the page between two heavy books. The end result from the raspberry tea gave me some gorgeous pinks and purples. And you'll notice that with any tea-treated paper, you'll get an antique, nostalgic look like this, which I'm a little in love with. Now that we're at this point in the project, we can break out our artist pens to do some drawing. Because I chose my favorite passage from Alice in Wonderland, I'd like to try to use my drawings to naturally frame in the passage. I'd also like to draw iconic details from the story. So, of course, I'm going to start with mushrooms. I've also chosen mushrooms because in scanning my page, the shapes made by the tea could easily be turned into mushrooms. By working with what's already on the page, I'm not forcing anything. I'm just going with the flow with some inspiration guiding the process. Personally, I find that I do my best work this way, and it's really fun because I don't know exactly how everything will turn out. To make these mushrooms, I'm looking for those arcs made by the bottom of my teacup. That's the mushroom cap, so I'll draw in details to tease out the rest of the mushroom. I start by adding the ribbing beneath the cap. I'll draw curved lines from what would be that outer edge of the cap in toward what would be the top of the stem. Usually, I start at the midpoint of the cap and then keep sectioning everything in half, repeating the curved line motion from the outer cap to the top of the stem. Next, I'll define the top of the mushroom cap. This is easy because the teacup already did the work and I'm just tracing. I'll define the outer edge of the cap also. To add visual interest, I'm going to draw mushrooms at different angles. This next one won't have any ribs showing. I'll start with a rounded cap, making a wide U shape, and then add a couple of squiggly lines to connect the points and create a lip. For the stem, I'll draw two lines at the same angle as the cap. Then I'll add a little collar by drawing a jagged line toward the top of the stem. All of this will create the basic outline. Now we can get into detailing. I want this mushroom to have some spots, so I'm going to draw semicircles on the cap. This adds dimension as it creates the idea of a raised edge. I'm also going to do some shading. For shading, I always have to remember to follow the contours. So for the stem and collar, I'll draw vertical shading lines. For the cap, I'll draw curved shading lines, and for the lip, I'll draw horizontal shading lines. I also need to think about which areas are going to have the least amount of light and draw my heaviest shading lines there. I'm definitely going to draw more mushrooms, but I'm not quite sure where. So I'm going to fill in some of these empty spaces toward the outside of the page with black to frame up the piece and bring things into focus. This will help me figure out the rest of the composition and decide on next steps. Aha! I found the spot for my next mushroom. I'll draw this in using the same techniques I mentioned before. I love that this one gets to have a magenta spot. Neat. Alright, I've done a lot of talking so far, so you can have a breather from my voice as I continue to frame up this piece with ink. While filling in the outer white spaces, I noticed this blob kind of looks like a hair, which would be a very fitting element to add. So I'm going to make some ears, give this guy a lower jaw and a nose, and voila, a March hare. I really like the way he looks, and honestly, it's better than anything I would have come up with on my own. Personally, I think the first task as an artist isn't to build a grand vision, but instead it's to notice what's right in front of you. You never know what you might see. And what's Alice in Wonderland without a nod to the Mad Hatter? Initially, I was going to add his top hat to the top right corner of the piece, but it wasn't clean enough to immediately read as a top hat. I was just not impressed with what was happening, but that's all right. A Cheshire Cat smile came to the rescue and magically appeared in the corner. That's where he wanted to be, apparently. So there is his mischievous grin starting to peep out from the dark. Also, a tree would frame my favorite passage beautifully, so I'm going to add that on the top right as well. Okay, now I'm going to add the Mad Hatter's hat, but I'm going to use clean lines with less detailing and more color blocking. Something to keep in mind when using a page of text as your canvas is that details can get lost easily. Minimizing the amount of detail and leaning into shading and color blocking can help your drawing stand out on the page rather than being swallowed by a busy background. To help this hat stand out, I'm going to color the ribbon black to create a color block. A thick outline helps too. I'm noticing that this hat looks like it's floating, well, because it is, so I'm going to fill in more black around it to incorporate it into the framing. And you know what? I think we have room for one more mushroom. All right, this book art is complete. If you'd like to hear a reading of my favorite passage, check out the short I dropped today. I do voices, it's very fun. I hope you've enjoyed this special project. If you did, please leave a like so I know to share more of this type of content. And if you've decided to create a piece of your own, leave a comment and let us know how it went. Thanks so much for tuning in today. A very merry on birthday to most of you. Until next time, take care.